So how you doing, Attorney Lay?
Pretty good. Yourself this afternoon?
I'm all right, for sure, for sure. So let's start by you introducing yourself and basically telling who is Clorius Lay.
Well, that, that would take a great deal of time. While we do this, my name is Clorius Lay. I'm an attorney at law, and I'm running for Lake County Council District 2. And beyond that, I'm prepared to answer any questions you have.
For sure. So we can start with your time in Gary. If you can go back to what got you, was there a certain event or something that happened that made you say, oh, I want to get as engaged as I can tell that you have been?
Well, most of what has occurred in my life has been sort of a blessing. I've been, in many cases, in the right place at the right time. When I first decided to actually be a candidate was around 1991. Up until then, I ran Dozier Allen's political team when I was approximately 29, 30 years of age. And that would have been somewhere around 1970, 71. I had spent some time in a think tank. I'd also had run a city. They called me executive director, but I ran, well, it wasn't really a city, it was a village. East Chicago Heights is now called Ford Heights. I came out of corporate headquarters of Inland Steel in Chicago. I have an accounting degree, and I was an internal auditor. And the last job I had before I became a lawyer, before I graduated from law school, I was vice president of University National Bank.
Do you enjoy what you do?
Yes, I have to enjoy it. I give up a great deal of income in order to do it.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, my salary is approximately $32,000. That was set this year. My income practicing law far exceeds that.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did once I decided to do this, I basically pretty much decided to stop practicing law. But I still maintain a license. I still take all the CLE, and my competency is very high.
Okay. For sure. So the target audience for these black chats are millennials, specifically from the age of about 21 to 37. So you said when you were about 29, 30, you decided to run.
No. When I graduated from Indiana University in Bloomington
Okay.
when I was 26. I went to Inland Steel corporate headquarters as an internal auditor and systems man.
Okay.
I was actually being groomed to be the first black officer of Inland Steel Corporation at that time. In 1968, there was a federal program in Gary called the Concentrated Employment Program. And what I had anticipated that I would be the director of that. Inland Steel wanted me to go and get some supervisory experience. I couldn't get that inside the corporation. It would take too long to get it. So that's when I came to Gary, and I wrote the program called Project New Careers. But the problem there was I thought I was going to be the head of the Concentrated Employment Program. So I had to take a substantial cut in pay to stay in Gary for it. I stayed here. When I say stayed here, I was always in Gary, but I went back to Illinois as the executive director of East Chicago Heights. What they did. They set up a recruitment, pretty much the nation, and I finished number one, so I accepted the employment.
For sure. So during that time, what was the energy like as it related to people being active and being civically aware?
Well, I think it's a great deal different than now. People just seem to listen to music, I guess, and get a lot of tattoos. So back during that period of time, people were African Americans trying to get the right to vote and things of that nature. You basically didn't get the ability to move certain places until 1964. And what surprisingly happened with that, some of the civil rights legislation, is that I was born in a place called Mount Bayou, Mississippi, which was an all-black town. And at that time, prior to 64, whites could not come in that town. They couldn't own property, really couldn't even get gas there.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened after they passed the civil rights legislation, they were able to do so. And that caused a lot of problems with that town. A person also that was born in Mount Bayou is Katie Hall, and we had the same midwife.
Mm-hmm.
She was 2 years older than me. And I came to Gary in 1942.
Mm-hmm.
So, I was here from 42 on.
Mm-hmm. Did you have any encouragement outside? Because I say that because when I graduated from Central State University, I reached out to the male, I guess, politicians, for lack of a better term, to kind of understand and learn the game and how I can best help the city move forward. And I didn't get much response. But the story you just told about how you kind of are taking them.
No, I didn't reach out to politicians at all. When I was, when I first entered high school, I was either number one. I went to Gary Frable.
Mm.
I was either number one or number two in my class going into high school. I was an honor student. When I entered high school, I ran cross country, and very quickly I was Frable's top cross country person.
Mm-hmm.
And they called me Lay of Frable. So I did that for about a year. But a decision I made was to go to work in Jimmy Dent's pool room on 18th and Washington. And the reason I entered that pool room was to play checkers. And they allowed me in to play checkers at a very young age. The lady that reared me, who was an aunt by marriage, had a sixth grade education, but probably was one of the smartest people I've ever met. She raised two children that were not hers, and we both ended up with pretty much doctor's degrees.
Mm-hmm.
It was a girl, lady now, who I refer to as my sister, who's deceased. She was smarter at books than I was, and I was very good at books. But the reason I went to the pool room was to play checkers. I'm now I'm equivalent to a chess grandmaster on the checkerboard. I'm a national champion.
Mm-hmm.
So that was something that took me away from some of the ills of the streets.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up over a house of prostitution. I grew up in the red light district. So by being in the pool room, which seems to be an unlikely place for you to develop, the men there who had literally no college, they had jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And they just encouraged me to do better, that's all.
And I think that's what's missing. That's what I was getting at. I think.
Well, you want politics. You're specifically
not just politics. I was looking for guidance. I grew up in a single parent household, of course, and I didn't have any. I did everything on my own,
Mm-hmm.
for the most part. Of course, my mother did what she could,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't know anything about college, let alone what happened after college. Right.
Well, let me show you what I did at 17. At 17, I entered the military service.
Mm.
I graduated from high school June the 11th, and I was in the Air Force July the 7th. So again, there were literally no jobs in Gary. They were laying off in the mill. The mill was the chief employer in the city.
Mm-hmm.
They were laying off. That would have been in 1958. So I basically didn't seek college.
Mm-hmm.
What I did was to seek employment, and I thought I would be able to travel and go places. Well, to the contrary, I went to Lincoln, Nebraska, because they gave me a special AFSC, so I could never leave. I was frozen.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure you know what that means. I couldn't leave, let's say, 2nd Air Force. I couldn't leave SAC. I couldn't travel or be reassigned anywhere because of my AFSC.
Okay. So how do we? So I think I'll come back to that. Actually, I want to talk about. So you are a veteran, correct?
Yes.
Army vet or
Air Force.
Air Force vet. I'm sorry. So my question is, because I hear a lot of people. I think I just seen somebody or heard it on the radio or something talking about the veteran community in general. What are some of the things that, or ways that we can collaborate with those veteran communities to?
But I wasn't confronted with the problems they appear to have.
Okay.
I was never in the combat zone.
Okay.
The Air Force is pretty much like just get up, go to work at 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock, whatever the time was, and you got off at 5. And that was pretty much it. I was on what is Strategic Air Command Base, SAC, but I wasn't a pilot.
Mm-hmm.
I went as high as I could. I was a personnel specialist with the beginning of data processing training. That's what the AFSC was.
Okay. So yeah, I want to use this first part kind of to cover some of the things that's what we did. I think we did a good job of covering. I didn't know a lot of the stuff that we just talked about, so I wanted to at least our audience will know that as well. So, as in your role as a councilman right now, what are some of the issues that you identified throughout the city?
Well, the city certainly, one of the problems that occurred was a referendum for the school system. I was against the referendum, but I also was on that first elected school board, and I was on the fiscal management board when the state took over. I'm generally of the opinion that, sometimes the people inside of Gary think the people outside are better, and that they start blaming, who did this and who created that. The state was absolutely responsible for the financial dilemma that the school system was in. They continued to loan them money, which that they knew they couldn't pay back. It's predatory lending. And they sent a person in 2016 named Jack Barton, and he ran the school debt even higher. Then they took over with these emergency managers. They took over April the 28, 2017 is when the governor signed the legislation. And I believe the school system is in a shamble now. I do not believe the people here running them have the capacity to improve them whatsoever. And I think they've demonstrated that. They have been here now 5 years. And our graduation rate is going down. Our performance in schools are going down. We have one high school, that's Westside, which I used to call a directional school, so they've closed all the schools. And a town without a school system is doomed to fail.
Agreed.
Young people are not going to come here and that they can bear children or have children, and they're not going to put them in this system. Even my grandson does not go to school inside the city of Gary. He's at a fairly expensive school outside, but he's extremely smart, and not because he's my grandson, but he really is. So we don't have an adequate school system. Our population, the census that was taken, in 2020, it was when the census was taken. I think we were undercounted, so we're going to lose all types of federal programs, although it's not a great idea to have federal programs, but African Americans need them. I come out of a black think tank too, so we viewed certain assistance that the government gave you had a double-edged sword. If they gave it to you, it was some tied to it that didn't make it good, such as federal programs. They never worked. That was one of the reasons I left Gary and went back away from the federal program. People like me benefited. I mean, we were paid to run the programs, but the recipients didn't get much out of it. The best they could hope for is to be hired by the program itself. So that wasn't working. So with a decreasing population and a decreasing tax base, and that's what's happening, the only thing that makes the town now is this covert or ARC money. And I don't know, that probably will be gone in 2 to 3 years. Even if it's spent well, I mean, no foolishness around it, it still will disappear. Our population is growing older. It's not growing younger. Our population on fixed incomes. So how you correct that, I certainly don't have the answer to that. I do know, and again, most people, before you can solve a problem, you must identify the existence. And most people somehow live in lolly-lolly land. They think things are just going to get better.
Yeah, agreed.
And I really don't see how they will, unless we identify the problem and, of course, attempt to correct it. Our police and firemen, it's only 3 things a city can do or should do. And that's general service, sweep the streets, shift the snow, because they don't pick it up, they just shift it somewhere. The police and firemen. Well, both the police and firemen are understaffed. Their equipment is not the best because they're understaffed. Their workload is excessive. And, of course, outside cities raid our police and firemen because they've been through the academy, and you can get them literally by paying them additional money. And some move on their own right. It's not salary. You hear people argue salary. It's not salary. Salary prior to 2008 was the big issue. After 2008, it's working condition, your supervisor, school system, things of that nature will call a person to leave and go to another department.
So you said a couple different things that I wanted to go touch back on. I think I want to go back to the referendum first, because I was one of the supporters of the referendum, and it was because it was kind of, we let it get to this point as citizens of Gary by not being as engaged as we have been since they've taken over. So my means, the reason I supported it was because I was in the mind state of what's next. How do we get past it? And if the referendum was going to be the start of that, then I wanted to be in support of that for the sake of the kids as well as the sake of the entire city. Because like you said, without a school system, a sufficient school system, then the city kind of...
Well, let's look at your support. I was against it. Yeah. But I also read, have you ever read Senate Bill 567? House Bill?
Not in its entirety, no.
Well, if you didn't read in its entirety, the last sentence could say, forget everything. What about House Bill 1350?
Not in its entirety,
okay,
of course.
So for all practical purposes, you haven't read it. You have to read bills and laws in their entirety to fully understand them.
Right.
I was against the referendum, not against children. Here you had these emergency managers came in 16. They started changing maybe every year, every 15 months. They were not reducing your overall debt that they, in fact, helped create. They spent very little time dealing with the academics of the school system. So what they told you is, I'm going to, under Dr. Paige McNulty, that first of all, I'm going to give you transparency. Well, that was a lie. If you had read House Bill 1350 in its entirety, you would have known that was a lie. She didn't have the authority to even make that statement. Number two, they said yes to the children. So let's look at how much money they got. We immediately gave them $25 million on the postponement of payment to reduce the debt. Were you aware of that?
Yes.
Okay. We then passed a referendum which theoretically would get them 71 million in theory if they collected it. And we also, the covert money, the art money they received, the initial amount they received was 95 million. They gave 34 million to the chartered schools, and they kept 61 million. When you add that up, they had $161 million. Our school system, grade-wise, is worse than it was in 2017, 2016. So how is that benefiting anything? Number two, people came in and argued for the referendum, and they disappeared. She created a 70-member body. That's total BS. I mean, 70 people can't do anything. She said to police her. Well, if you give me the figures, I can police. I'm an accountant. I don't need 69 other people.
I'm one of the 70, but I didn't go though. But
well, none of them are going. That 70 is non-existent. It don't exist. That was the flim flam. Now you got students over there, I guess, picketing and boycotting.
And that's why I didn't go. I felt like it was a attempt at just to say that I did it. When I heard it was 70 people, I said,
Well, yeah, but here again, the more people you have, the less you have to tell them. I mean, no accounting firm would sit in, State Board of Council would sit in 70 people to audit
Right.
the city.
I agree.
Why would you need the government is going to audit the 71 million? She misled people by saying all that was being done at Westside, that was our money.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point, there's no communication between McNulty and the city. The other day, and I think they told her to come because I was missing from a council meeting on March the 15th. I was doing, I was politics, and she appeared out of nowhere. So I suspect my president, Mr. Godwin, brought her in when I wasn't there so that I wouldn't be able to ask her certain questions. She didn't even know how many people she was feeding. Just little questions she didn't have the answer to.
I saw that meeting.
Then they put through House Bill, what, the 15th?
Yeah, the meeting where you asked her about how many kids they were serving.
She didn't know. She didn't know no answer to that. Our school system 99% African American, so we should have African American leadership. Now that's not racist. That's just practical. As an example, no Jewish family would send their children to a German school. They just wouldn't do that.
They would not.
No, that wouldn't cross their mind. But we are sending our children into a system that is causing them problems. Then all of a sudden we had this e-learning. That's absolutely will not educate African American students. And some people say, oh, it's messing up everywhere, therefore it's all right here. That's not true. Our school system's been taken over, so they should be able to plan better. Then even our legislators was listening to a guy named Tim Brown, who was over the Ways and Means in Indianapolis. He the one that authored 1187, which basically said they was going to stay here forever.
Yeah.
What they did in the middle of the referendum, just before it passed, they extended the contract for MGT for 2 years. So again, we're rewarding failure. And the city didn't seem to mind that.
I think when you said reward and failure, something stuck out to me, and I was having this conversation earlier, and you can give me your opinion on something that I think as well. So I think that the city operates on tradition, like the traditional tactics, traditional ways of doing business, or whatever the case. So with that being said, well, what's your response to that before I actually ask the question?
I mean, that's a little vague to me. What tradition?
So traditionally,
say something specific.
Traditionally, the precinct organizations were more active, and we put more merit on like their endorsements and things like that.
Oh no, the precinct organization is absolutely in disarray. I mean, no, the politics was much different, let's say, in the days of Richard Hatcher back in 67, 68.
And I agree.
I went before the precinct organization. They did not endorse me.
And that's what I was going to get at next.
Well, I've never went before it before. In other words, I'd won about 6 or 7 times. I've won office, and I did not go before the precinct organization. The funny thing there, I'm a Sagamore. I don't know if you.
I've heard of the organization.
And it's called Sagamore. The Wabash was created in 1945. It's like the President's Medal of Freedom. I wear the Sagamore pin. I'm part of the council of the Sagamore. Also, a distinguished Hoosier. My opponent, through implications, implied that he's done more in 3 years, and all he came up with was shoveling snow. And they applauded. Now, again, I'm not thin-skinned, but there have been courts where I walk in as a Sagamore, and the court will stop and point out that I am a Sagamore of the Wabash. They understand it, so they don't hear. Individually, they're good people. Collectively, it's a farce.
Disarray. But you got the Griffith endorsement also.
That was surprising because you judge a man by his enemies. I have some very substantial enemies. One is Martinez, Oscar Martinez, Lake County Sheriff. And it's ridiculous what he does. Now, of course, he's been indicted. Tom McDermott is involved. Lorenzo Arredondo, who I hope that he pulled through, he had a stroke or failed or did something, but I've known him 60 years. And finally, Jim Wiesner. So what happened?
And that was a list of your enemies, right?
Yeah, then you can throw in impact.
Okay.
Okay. You can throw them in. They're being used. They think they're carrying out their program. These other people, no, it's in reverse. The first group is carrying out their own program and using these individuals back here. Do I think that will affect the outcome of the race? No, I don't. I went before the precinct organization. I wanted the endorsement, and I was going to give them the $1,500. That was just simply insurance. You know, they might stumble up and do something. But once they said no, and I talked to 4 people, all of us agreed it was a waste of money. 2 said don't do it at all. 2 said buy the insurance because I've spent a lot of money. No, I don't see. It's in the hands of the people of Gary, and they have rewarded me time after time after time. So I see no reason that the person I'm running against, who he's running, you don't know anything about him.
Whom I reached out. Well, I'll save that. Never mind.
Well, it don't matter when you reached out. When you reached out,
he told me no. I was gonna save it for it. But
well, no, I'm not talking about him not coming. When he come, he will bring nothing. In other words,
he not coming here. So
no, I understand that. But let's go back to how he initially came in office. The impact was created by John Bunches.
Okay.
I was one of Bunches' attorneys, both there for legal skills and political knowledge. He created impact to counter Richard Lee in his race. We came very close the first time that we ran against Bunch. We came under 2,000 votes. I don't know the exact figure. For a while there, I thought we certainly could win it. So this impact organization was created basically to stop Richard Lee. So they put, along with the precinct organization, they put Mr. Machaka in office, and I was there. And what he told them was he gave ice cones to children. That's what he did. Well, I like ice combs, and I'm sure my grandson like ice combs. And probably my daughter and my former wife, who I'm very close to, we all would probably eat ice combs. They taste good, but that's not a basis to elect a person to represent you.
Mm-hmm.
Now he's shoveling snow. The precinct organization never asked him how much snow did you shovel, how many houses. He said he shoveled for senior citizens. Well, if I knew he was shoveling, I'd have called him myself. I qualify. I mean, under any senior citizen rule in this country.
Right.
So, no, they're totally ineffective as a group. They really are. They're nice people individually now, but once you put them together, group, they totally ineffective.
So would you say his? How would you rate the job that the current county councilperson for District 2 has done? I don't want to say anything.
Okay, and again, I don't want to beat up on. He's done literally nothing that I'm aware of. Okay, here's what he first said about the motion testing, that they were trying to get rid of that in Indiana because it's only 2 counties in Indiana have the motion testing. I think it's St. Joe and Gary. The reason we have emotion has nothing to do with the state of Indiana. We're in the Chicago zone. So the EPA allowed the governor to administer the program. They sued the governor, but they're not going to get rid of the pollution. It's not in South Bend. We're in the Chicago zone. So they sort of playing with the people. Another thing that has come up recently, and this guy is absolutely a friend. I don't misunderstand me, but it makes no sense. He has said to Lottie Randolph, he is asking that there be elected judges, okay, that we should not have this retention system. Well, let's look at the makeup of the legislature. I believe it's 70-30 in the House, and some ridiculous number over in the Senate, maybe 50-11, and a Republican governor. Now, they had an opportunity to do it back in 1989. The House was split 50-50. And what they decided was they wouldn't do it because Evan Bayh didn't want them to do it because that took the right to appoint judges from him. So now they're raising the same thing. It truly is a waste of time.
It's just hard to get some type of influence here because, I mean, like I said, it's been the same faces, same people in the same spots forever. Or if they're not in this spot, they hop into this spot.
But see, again, I'm getting lost. How am I in your way to doing it?
I'm not saying you specifically.
No, let's talk about us. Let's talk about us.
Me and you?
Oh, yeah. All you got to do is defeat me in a race. Well, that's simple. I mean, take the intellectual giants that you just named.
I would be running against you and the tradition of the city, whereas they only support, I guess, who, like you even just said it with the precinct org. Like, well, that's traditional. Like,
no. I've never been endorsed by the precinct organization.
You're not in my way, Attorney Lay. I just hope that I'm able to learn from
people,
you. That's all.
Put me in the way. Listen, all you have to do is defeat me. No, seriously.
I'm not speaking just the policy, though, or being a politician. I'm speaking on any leadership opportunities to get in those rooms, I always say.
Yeah, but the leadership in politics is not the leadership in the community.
So we can close with this then. I'm a 24-year-old in the city of Gary from Delaney Projects. 1, why should I vote? And 2, why should I vote for you for county councilman of the 2nd District?
I think you should vote for yourself. In other words, if you at least, at this point, the only thing that we can do is pick the local leadership. I think what they have to do is to at least compare the people they look at the
The
choices.
opposition.
Yeah, look at the choices. Vote for me in the abstract is not a good way to vote. You should compare me to whether it was you in the race or whether it was someone else. And do you need someone to go in there on the job training and take them 5 years to learn? Government needs to function very fast and out of the way because it's not supposed to. It doesn't create anything.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't produce anything. And anytime it does anything, it needs your tax dollars. So if it don't get your tax dollars or some kind of federal funding, then it can't do it. So it can't be done in the abstract. But the one privilege or right that you have now is the right to vote. And if you don't exercise that right, pretty soon you're going to lose the right to vote. You're going to get the down Trumps and some of these other crazy people
Mm-hmm.
in office that's going to try to accommodate you. They're going to take the right to vote from you. And once they do that, the pendulum, as I said, is going back. Even how we're treated is going back to, much earlier days. When I grew up, it was all kind of small black businesses in the area. Barber shops, shoe shops, restaurants, little marketing, jewelry stores that employed people. So if you're 24 and you don't know why you should vote, you certainly are in bad shape. You just should know. What have they been doing? They graduated from high school at 17. What's this 24-year-old been doing? Is he employed?
He's employed. He's employed at the casino.
Okay, and he don't know whether or not he should vote.
He doesn't think his votes count. He doesn't think his vote count. He doesn't think that.
Where they get all votes count?
He doesn't feel that way. He doesn't feel heard. He doesn't feel supported. He doesn't feel like the politicians that are in those seats represent anything that he feels. So he doesn't participate at all.
Well, what you do is you get rid of them.
Get rid of that politician.
Yes. Or run yourself. Then try to do it that way. Try to replace them with yourself. The only way you can do pretty much what you think you can do, but is for you to attempt to do it yourself. In most cases, you won't be able to do that. I have a voting principle. It sounds a little goofy, but it's okay. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few and the one. Most of that came from a Star Trek movie in 1982. Spock said part of it. Kirk said, or the one. I changed it from or to and the one so I can take some credit for that statement.
Mm-hmm.
If you vote along those lines, I found that you don't make a lot of mistakes.
Sure.
Because you're not voting for self-gratification, you're voting for other people.
For sure.
And based upon that, I would vote for a person who has that philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
The needs of the many outweigh the few and the one.
For sure.
So that you could approach it that way. But when you initially informed me that I was supposed to convince people to vote, I don't have the slightest idea. I just know what went on and the difficulty of us voting. And I'm talking about African Americans now.
Mm-hmm.
They've tried to stop us at all junctions. Now, if your adversary is trying to stop you from doing something, that probably is what you need to be doing, no matter what it is. If they're trying to stop you, the adversary is saying, I'm going to stop you, and you should push forward and try to do that. Right. And they're trying to stop us from voting. I mean, so that makes no sense to.
For sure. Anything you want to close out with specifically before we end it?
No, do I get paid for this?
Get paid? Not for me. But I want to take this opportunity to show my appreciation for you sitting down with me and talking with me. I enjoyed this conversation, and again, I think that your experience is something that everybody could benefit from, even just from hearing about it. So I appreciate this conversation from that standpoint as well. Peace and love to everybody that enjoyed this interview or watched this interview.
Well, I hope it benefits what you're trying to do.
And I hope it benefits you as well. So, again, thank you.
Yeah, it can't hurt. Any publicity. Even bad publicity is bad, no publicity.
I agree. So, thanks.
All right.